Israel study abroads, divest from to taxing from Israel, because we can't get free school or free healthcare, but Israel can get all these things. I, for one, as a student, I have student loans that I need to pay. And I always wonder, what am I going to do with them if I'm not able to have the same opportunities as, Israel has, like free healthcare and free schooling.
I think someone was a little camera shy there. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. My name is Luke Radowski here of wearechange.org, and there's a lot of absolutely wild and crazy news to get into as the protests all around the world now are spreading like a wildfire, as we predicted that this was going to happen. What are the larger ramifications? What's the overreaction from the right now? Well, there's a lot of things to talk about in a real nuanced way that we're going to be discussing here on this independent media broadcast. As of course, it's going to be also important to bring up what's happening right now in El Salvador, where the president there is now going after some very high-level criminals, as the American people are left asking themselves, gee, I kind of wish what was happening in El Salvador was happening here in the United States. Will it? Well, we're going to be answering that question, plus a lot more, all here during this broadcast. If you like the shirt that I'm wearing, you can get it on thebestpoliticalshirts.com. And the clip that we played in the beginning of this broadcast was from, I think, Al Jazeera, highlighting how a young woman was trying to express that the U.S. government shouldn't be taking her money and giving it to foreign governments to wage conflicts, and that they should just give it to her. And I'm just kind of sitting here being like, how about you just stop taking the money in the first place? Can we stop? You guys literally print the money out of thin air. Could you stop just taking it? Can you just allow the people who worked hard for it to keep it? As, of course, that idea is an idea that they absolutely don't want spreading. As, of course, financially, the situation is very tough for the American people and going to get a lot tougher out there, as the Republic First Bank, a regional lender in Philadelphia, became the first bank failure of 2024, with some people speculating that there's going to be a lot more of these potentially this year. All of this as the situation is so dire that some people are literally eating each other's faces. We saw this in Florida before, now we're seeing it today in Las Vegas, as the American people look on to the leadership that right now in El Salvador gathered its entire executive branch and in front of video cameras, almost as if this was from a kind of Narcos-like Netflix TV series, explained to his executive office that the Attorney General of El Salvador will be investigating every single last one of them for bribery and corruption. Giving a very eloquent speech that many people in the room weren't prepared for. Some were shocked, some weren't happy, as the president of El Salvador, Bukele, went after a lot of low-level criminals, and it definitely looks like he's going to be going after a lot of the higher-level ones very soon. Here's a small clip of his announcement to his executive office.
Como pueden ver ustedes todos, los que estamos aquí reunidos son parte del Ejecutivo, del órgano ejecutivo, que es el del cual yo estoy encargado, a excepción de una persona. Es el fiscal general que está aquí. Él no es del Ejecutivo. Y está acá por una razón bien sencilla. Y es porque le quiero pedir en público de que investiguemos a todos los que están acá. Para atrás y para adelante.
This is probably where a lot of the corrupted government officials within his executive branch were like, oh crap, as Elon Musk responded to this particular video by saying, quote, based, as Bukele took to his Twitter account and said, it is not the first and it will not be the last. If God allows it, our war against corruption will be successful as our war against the gangs, retweeting the arrest of the presidential commissioner who was just recently arrested on bribery charges. All of this as the American people are kind of looking at El Salvador and being like, wow, that's actually kind of incredible. That's actually pretty powerful. I wish we had that here in the United States, as the federal government is literally with the intel agencies running a larger cover-up operation of the president's son, who's sleeping with women of the night, taking illegal substances, brandishing firearms, as he's cutting deals internationally with world leaders and businesses from China and Ukraine. As today, lawyers from Hunter Biden are now demanding that Fox News stop showing these images of him doing illegal things from his laptop, or they will sue them. Yes, you heard that correctly. The president's son is threatening to sue a news network for highlighting his clear illegal activities that he got away scot-free from and was never held responsible for. This, as the former president of the United States was also just found in contempt and fined $9,000 for violating his gag order, as he's being threatened with jail time for not cooperating with the court, as the former president of the United States is facing over 700 plus years in jail. Yeah, clearly, there's no politicking here. Clearly, this is not a banana republic. Clearly, it's not like this stuff has happened throughout despotic Latin American countries all throughout the last few decades, right? Oh, wait. Yeah, that's exactly what happens under a banana republic. And that's why, with the times becoming tougher and more dangerous than before, you should sign up to LukeUnfiltered.com. You could sign up for just less than $8 a month. You could also sign up for $15. You could also sign up for $99, whatever your budget allows. I know the times are tough out there, and it really does mean a lot to me that you do sign up, as of course, this is our main way that we survive, that we are allowed to still be an independent media organization, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys signing up and allowing us to still carry on our operation the way it is. We'd go out of our ways. We'd give you free tickets like we did to the Minds Festival. Those tickets were $100. Members of LukeUnfiltered.com got them for free. If you signed up for $8, that saved you literally $92. This, as you also got a nature hike in Austin, Texas, just a few days ago. Last week, we did a nature hike in Miami, Florida, and we're going to be doing another one, probably somewhere in Tampa or Orlando, coming up soon, just for members of LukeUnfiltered.com. Your memberships help spur on these larger hikes, these larger networking events, this event that, of course, helps heal people physically and mentally from the ailments of social media derangement syndromes, as going out there, touching grass, hiking, meeting like-minded individual is good for the soul, good for the mind, good for the body, and that's what we spur on. That's what we try to inspire. And you could do that too, right now, just by signing up to LukeUnfiltered.com. Your membership's more important than ever, as we're going to be doing some really cool stuff all around the United States and even, I think, Europe very soon. All just for members of LukeUnfiltered.com. Sign up right now. The link is in the description below, and I will see you there with a special broadcast available just for members, as I released a 20-plus minute interview from our nature hike that you guys could watch from yesterday. I did a really cool walk and talk video yesterday about the children not being all right. That's also available for members. And as a member, you also get to call into our live show, as we are going to be going live at 6 p.m. Eastern later on today with an incredible guest from Brazil, detailing the situation. They are live here in studio. You could be a part of that conversation by signing up to LukeUnfiltered.com, going on our Telegram channel, only available for members, and then calling in right after this broadcast. This, as in major leftist institutions of learning, we have had a lot of protests recently all throughout this country. Most prominently in Columbia University in New York City, where now some student protesters have decided to break into a building and occupy it for their political purposes of trying to persuade the United States of not financing a foreign government and their conflict against another group of people that the protesters believe are being subjugated. This, as the Daily Mail is reporting, that there's fury at Columbia universities as there's now, quote, an insurrection like takeover of Hamilton Hall, as student protesters and others have decided to ignore a deadline to leave their encampment, as Columbia University also announced that it will start expelling some of these students for these protests, as faculty members have actually participated in them. As today, Columbia students are reporting that they are being denied access to, quote, the dining halls. This as the campus has been put on lockdown, classes have been suspended in person and made to go virtual. And as we predicted on this particular YouTube channel, with the response from the corporate media, the government, and the right-wing media sphere, these protests have grown and inspired many other protests, not just in the United States, but also other places in the world, as now there are these types of protests happening in France, as the riot police there have been deployed, as young people at a university in Paris are also deciding to do their own kind of sit-ins, their own kind of protests that, of course, the French riot police are responding to by, of course, dragging them out of the premises and arresting them. So far, over 1,200 arrests already have been made of these types of protests here domestically inside of the United States. In Austin, the charges were dropped against many of these students, as it's important to note here that these students and these protests are largely inconvenient towards the Democratic Party and specifically the Biden administration. As Tim Pool highlights and says, quote, Biden is in trouble, highlighting a poll, highlighting how many young people in this country disapprove of this current administration's stance on the conflict in the Middle East right now. And with these protests signaling troubles for the Biden administration, you of course have their attack dogs that have been unleashed on MSNBC that are now comparing these protests to January 6th. Yes, you heard that correctly. There are now multiple segments on MSNBC, specifically with multiple personalities and individuals saying that these protests are like January 6th, essentially kind of nudging at the fact that these people should be treated like the J6ers, who, according to some lawyers, have had their human rights violated after facing the heavy hand of political prosecution. But this is a clip from Morning Joe, where Mika Brzezinski, the daughter of Zbigniew Brzezinski, major CFR Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group major player, who had this to say for the mainly Democratic viewing audience.
Richard, to your point, I think that's where that's the place we've all been sitting in watching this, going, what the hell is going on? What are these universities doing? Why aren't they doing something? And I'll echo the horror that this does look like January 6th. What a terrible example for our students. At the same time, these are young adults, and the question is, why do you choose to learn about the complexities of other situations around the world? But this one, you want to set up an encampment. This one, you want to scare people. This one, you want to come to the edge of violence or even go to violence.
Not the
this
edge.
one,
They're
you
breaking
risk
into buildings.
your future and your education for. See, I think these college students obviously are missing the part where they need to see what's going on across the country with these protests, that it's now in the realm of violence. It's in the realm of hatred, whether...
Realm of violence? What does that mean? Why do you have to extrapolate that? As, of course, if there was a lot of violence, we would have been seeing it. Now we do see a couple of people being kind of blocked off and not allowed to go somewhere. But overall, I mean, Alex Stein got tackled temporarily. But overall, you compare these protests to the protests that happened during the last election cycle, and these protests are absolutely peaceful compared to what the country had to go through not so long ago. So overall, this kind of larger, disingenuous attack on them and saying that they're in the realm of violence really just shows you how desperate the establishment is to try to get rid of these protesters that, again, are very inconvenient to the current political party in charge right now. And this is kind of curious, as Donald Trump is, of course, leading the charge and also telling his supporters that the protests need to be stopped now, as some people are responding and saying that maybe Jared Kushner took his phone. As there's a lot of very interesting reactions from the right. There's now conversations about allegedly janitors being kidnapped here. I kid you not. What in the world is going on here? Again, we don't know. But if anyone should be skeptical of state power and authority being over-abused, especially when it comes to squashing political dissent and conversations, it should be the Donald Trumps of this world, his supporters, and all of them who are still locked up in solitary confinement for going to a protest that, of course, has been weaponized and politicized by the Department of Justice that went after them, that now looks like it is edging closer and closer to trying to set up this larger January 6th precedent where protests are going to be criminalized to the fullest extent of the law. Now, will this happen with these particular protesters and individuals? Well, a lot of them are left-wing. A lot of them are tied into a lot of very powerful billionaires that we can't even mention here on this particular broadcast that, of course, do finance a lot of the district attorneys and do finance a lot of these larger groups and organizations through, of course, proxies, as the New York Post has a very interesting article detailing how one of these billionaires is, quote, allegedly paying these student radicals who are fueling these protests nationwide, as even Snopes described how specific organizations move money. And yes, some of the money has been going to support some of the organizations a part of these larger protests. That money is also connected to district attorneys and could be why in some states the charges against these students are just being dropped. As other people have brought comparisons to these protests to, of course, the cultural Chinese Maoist revolution. And whatever your take and whatever your understanding on it, I think it's important not to blur the lines here and just clearly state, hey, if someone commits violence, they should be held responsible for that. If someone is peacefully protesting and expressing their political opinions, whether it's inconvenient to the current party in charge right now or not, they should have a right to do so, and they shouldn't be impeded and they shouldn't be stopped. And we saw this. As soon as I saw this happening, I'm like, watch, these protests are going to be the next it. They're going to grow. They're going to expand. I saw the right-wing kind of reaction to this. I saw the police kind of response to this, and I'm like, wow, these are all the ingredients that I saw during Occupy Wall Street. And just like we called it, we have these protests that are going to become more and more prominent, mainly because of the states and power establishment reaction to them, almost as if they kind of want them to kind of grow too. What's really going on here? What's the larger conspiracy here? What do you think is going on? Let me know now in the comment section below, as of course we could hypothetically lay out multiple different arguments. But no matter where you stand, no matter what your political opinion is, I think that it is absolutely fair to say that these protests are going to be going on for a little bit longer. There are going to be a lot of very interesting discussions about them. And to me, they should be accurate discussions rather than just hyperbolic, emotional ones that are absolutely illogical. Sadly, there's a lot of illogical stuff out there. But if you thought we made some interesting observations, if you think we did a good job describing the situation in an unbiased way, share this video with your friends and family members. We're going live later on today, 6 p.m. Eastern, here on this YouTube channel. Stay tuned for that, plus a lot more, all here on youtube.com/WeAreChange.